The idea of global cooperation might seem naive at first glance, but it's not. It's necessary. And like so many other challenging issues, there are several common pushbacks people offer when it comes to this idea. Pushbacks like nationalism, competition, immigration, and isolationism. But the fact is that these fear-driven narratives and information silos aren't protecting us. They're pushing us toward fragility instead of strength. Our focus should be on outcomes, a bit of self-interest, and whether or not we're willing to face reality. Welcome to another bonus edition of the MTB Podcast, a segment of the weekly episode that I call Afterthoughts. This is my favorite part of these weekly presentations because it gives me a chance to dig a little deeper into something that came up during the main episode. So let's talk honestly for a few minutes, because the statement I made when summing up the lessons from the 3 readings in the main episode this week will probably trigger a lot of eye rolling from otherwise decent people. Now, that line that I used to summarize the 3 lessons was this: cooperation, kindness, and responsibility at a global scale aren't naive ideals. They're the ethical foundation of a much better future. A lot of folks hear that and think, sure, that sounds nice, completely unrealistic. So instead of soft pedaling this, I want to do the opposite. I want to take the most common objections seriously and then try to dismantle them. Not with slogans or memes, not with moral posturing, not even with Bible verses, but with logic, history, and proven, demonstrated outcomes. Because if we're going to claim that we value logic and reason, that we're being realistic and looking for true results, then we need to follow those principles where they actually lead. So let's dive into that in this episode of Afterthoughts. All right, the topic that we're focusing on here is really the idea of cosmopolitan humanism and the claim that it isn't naive, that it's actually our best chance of survival as a species. The first pushback I get from that, though, is that we need to protect our own country first. This is probably the most common objection, and it sounds reasonable. It doesn't sound hateful. It doesn't sound cruel. It sounds practical. We need to take care of our own country first. Seems to make sense. The problem is, it's based on a fantasy version of how the modern world actually works. We live in a globally integrated system. Our food, our medicine, our energy and technology and manufacturing, they're all tied to international supply chains. And pretending we can just do it all here, that isn't strength, it's ignorance. And this is where the idea of comparative advantage matters. Now, this is from Econ 101, so bear with me if you understand it already, because lots of isolationists and nationalists don't seem to have a clue. Comparative advantage means that just because we can make something here doesn't mean we should make it here. Comparative advantage means that countries focus on producing what they're best at or what is most profitable for them, and then they trade for the rest. People who claim otherwise are confusing possibility with efficiency, and that's a dangerous trade-off. Just because I can grow my own vegetables, or just because I can fix my own roof, doesn't mean I should. Buying my veggies from a grocery store or a farmer's market, or paying a professional to have my roof repaired, well, it isn't charity. That's efficiency. Comparative advantage is linked to opportunity cost. I do what I'm best at, or what is most valuable or profitable to me, and I pay others to do everything else. As I said, it's efficient, but it also builds resilience because it's how you get better outcomes with fewer resources. Right? If I'm doing what I'm best and most efficient at, and you're doing what you're best and most efficient at, and then we trade with each other and whoever else we need to meet all of our needs, the entire system becomes maximized for efficiency. At a national level, so should the United States build factories to start sewing T-shirts again? High volume, low skill, low margin goods? Or should we try to build factories to manufacture computer chips, high volume, high skill, high margin goods with strategic importance? Well, the answer should be obvious, and it demonstrates the concept of comparative advantage. Of course, manufacturing might not be the best example because in all advanced, wealthy economies, manufacturing accounts for less than 20% of GDP. If manufacturing was the true indicator of economic wealth and health in a country, Bangladesh and Vietnam would be the two richest nations on earth. And they're not. But that's a discussion for a different day. When people say, screw the rest of the world, we should just do everything here ourselves, what they're really saying is that they're okay with higher costs, less innovation, slower production, and more fragility. These are historically verifiable economic outcomes. So, economic protectionism that embraces isolationism is not protecting the country. It's weakening it. However, global supply chains aren't without risks, which is why cooperation is so damned important. COVID showed us exactly what happens when supply chains fail. Semiconductor shortages showed us how interconnected modern economies really are. Climate disruptions are already reshaping global food systems. But you can't wall yourself off from a world that produces your insulin, your electronics, your fertilizer, and a lot of your energy inputs. That's not realism. That's denial. All right, pushback number 2. This is idealism. Nations compete. That's just reality. Here's the part people don't like hearing. Competition without cooperation doesn't make you strong. It makes you dependent on luck and military might. And that is an incredibly dangerous way to organize a world. If your strategy depends on being militarily dominant forever, outspending everyone else, and threatening compliance, then you're not managing risk. You're escalating it. History is clear on this. Cooperation is not the opposite of realism. Cooperation is how we evolved and how we created the complex societies we have today. And cooperation is how serious societies reduce the chance of catastrophic failure. Trade agreements, public health coordination, climate accords, shared norms, they all exist because competition alone produces instability. Cooperation produces stability. When cooperation collapses, conflict fills the gap. And if your fallback plan is, we'll just enforce order with force of arms, you are gambling everything on violence never turning inward. That gamble has a terrible track record historically. Okay, pushback number 3. Some countries will never cooperate with us. This is where the conversation usually stops. And it shouldn't. Yes, some countries won't cooperate. Some governments are authoritarian. Some leaders act in bad faith. Heck, that's what our country is doing right now. That has always been true. But history also shows that countries and peoples change. Germany and Japan didn't cooperate with the world back in 1943, but they did by 1955. South Africa didn't cooperate under apartheid. It eventually did. Eastern Europe didn't cooperate under the Soviet system. That changed too. But here's what we need to understand. Change doesn't happen because everyone waits for perfection to show up. It happens because someone goes first. And here's the harder truth we need to face. Since the end of World War II, the United States has been drifting not toward leadership, but toward empire. One of the clearest indications is military overreach. We have military bases spread across the globe. We project power everywhere. We overthrow governments we don't like, and sometimes threaten ones we do. We remove a country's leader and tell the world that we'll just run and rebuild the country. We threaten to annex allies and ignore treaties. And we tell ourselves this is stability? But let's remember something important. Rome didn't fall because it lost militarily. Its legions were still conquering abroad while the republic rotted at home. Infrastructure decayed. Inequality exploded. Civic trust collapsed. The Senate was sidelined as power was consolidated and concentrated into one person. Does that sound familiar? Empires don't collapse when they're defeated militarily. They collapse when they stop tending to their own health. And international bullying doesn't prevent that. It accelerates it. If we want a strong country, we need a healthy one. We need a country that has checks and balances to power, that has functional institutions, that focuses on shared prosperity, that rebuilds trust in governance, and has the ability to cooperate rather than dominate. Look, eventually, the schoolyard bully always becomes irrelevant. History is ruthless about that. All right, pushback number 4. This is too big. Nothing I do matters. This is the quiet one, maybe the respectable pushback, the one that sounds like humility but functions as surrender. Look, feeling overwhelmed doesn't make you wise, but it does make you human. You see, choosing apathy because the problems are large doesn't make those problems smaller. Certainly doesn't make them go away. It just guarantees that those problems will be shaped by people with worse values. Every system that exists today was built by people making cumulative choices. Choices about what they tolerated, what they funded, what they normalized, what they excused. Cosmopolitan responsibility doesn't start with saving the world. It starts with refusing to believe the easy lies that we're being told. It starts with staying informed, with supporting policies that reduce harm instead of maximizing dominance. Progress is never inevitable, but decline isn't inevitable either. Both are the outcomes of choices. And that brings us to the final pushback that I'm going to address. Pushback number 5. Immigration is an invasion, and isolation is worth the cost. This is the pushback we can't afford to dance around because it explains so much of what feels immovable right now. For years, decades, in fact, at least a third of the country has been fed a single relentless story. We are under invasion. Not immigration, not demographic change, an invasion. They've been told by sources they trust that people are pouring across the border, bringing drugs, committing crimes, overwhelming hospitals and schools, draining social programs, and intentionally replacing the country they grew up in. They've been told this is coordinated, it's existential, and it's urgent. And here's the hard part. It doesn't matter that crime data doesn't support this narrative. It doesn't matter that economic data doesn't support this narrative. Economic data certainly doesn't support Trump's current claims of having a successful economy. Right? It doesn't matter. They aren't exposed to that data, and if they were, they probably wouldn't believe it anyway. If we were consuming the same information that they are, day after day, year after year, many of us would likely reach similar conclusions. This isn't really a failure of intelligence. It's the result of information asymmetry. And that asymmetry is a feature, not a bug. This information asymmetry is completely intentional. A handful of extraordinarily wealthy individuals control the platforms, networks, and algorithms that maintain this echo chamber, and they are very good at it. We keep waiting for that echo chamber to shatter on its own. It won't. Because once someone truly believes they are under quiet invasion, everything is filtered through that lens. Cooperation looks like surrender. Data looks like propaganda. Human dignity looks like weakness. And isolationism? Isolationism feels not just reasonable, but necessary. In that worldview, burning down the future is acceptable because it's framed as better than letting the invaders win. And that's why appeals to global cooperation just bounce off folks like that. You cannot reason someone out of a fear that is being actively curated and constantly reinforced. But let's be clear, this is not an argument against cosmopolitan responsibility. If anything, it's the strongest argument for acting now. Because waiting for some miracle mass deprogramming while institutions erode right in front of our eyes, that's not neutrality. That's acquiescence. And it's how empires decay. It's how isolation becomes policy. And it's how fear beats reality. So let's end where I tried to start, with some blunt honesty. If you truly believe in logic and reason, then you have to follow the evidence wherever it leads. And the evidence here is pretty damn clear. Climate instability will affect you. Pandemics will affect you. Global supply disruptions will affect you. War and displacement will destabilize your economy. This isn't about liking the idea of global responsibility. Global cooperation helps you whether you like it or not. Cosmopolitan humanism isn't about loving everyone equally or abandoning your country. It's about understanding reality clearly enough to act in your own long-term interests, instead of acting out of ignorance and fear and burning the future down in the process. You don't have to agree with this framework, but if you reject it, at least be honest about the cost. Because the world you think you're trying to hold back is the world you already live in, and pretending otherwise doesn't make it any safer. And when a third of the country is being trained to see the world as a siege, the most dangerous thing the rest of us can do is keep waiting for facts and data to save us. We need to take positive, healthy action now. Cooperation, kindness, and responsibility at a global scale aren't naive ideals. They are the ethical foundation of a much, much better future. All right, thanks for joining me for this episode of Afterthoughts. If you want to keep up on everything I'm doing, please head over to thecodaproject.com and subscribe to my newsletter. You'll get notifications whenever I publish anything, and I'll also keep you updated on the weekly live streams of Mythologizing the Bible. If you subscribe for free over at the Coda Project, you'll start receiving my publication called The Weekly Compass. This is a brief guide on a single core value. Think of it as a mini lesson plan for personal growth. It's perfect for families, students, and adults because I include discussion questions designed for each age group. As a subscriber, you'll also have access to the Guide to Kitchen Table Activism, which is a detailed resource designed to help you be politically active from your own home. The guide explains why activism is important, the philosophy behind kitchen table activism, and the foundational values it supports, before laying out how to use the tools you have to make your voice heard. It provides tools, tactics, and templates for you to use, and it only takes 15 minutes a week. If you care about our democracy, our country, and our world, then I encourage you to check it out. While you're at it, make sure you hit the subscribe button so that you'll start receiving my newsletter called The Kitchen Table Activist. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, remember to question everything, keep what's good, and live what matters.